I do it too now. Like if somebody says, no, I want to go to Japan. Okay, yeah. You want to go to Ginza, and then you want to go see Kabuki, and then you want to go see Roppongi. Oh, yeah, Shibuya. And they're looking at me smiling saying, what?
All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the KoreKara podcast. So this week we talked to Steve, who runs a YouTube channel called Steve's Point of View with nearly 500,000 subscribers, and his experience running a company in Japan and America. But more importantly, he speaks impeccable Japanese. So in the episode, we talk about his experience learning Japanese, study techniques, and how he got into cars and business in the first place.
But you want to know what our point of view is?
What?
Smashing the like button! Hope you guys enjoy.
So Steve, can you give us a quick background of who you are and where you're at today?
Nice to meet you guys, and thank you for having me on your podcast. My name is Steve. I have a YouTube channel called Steve's POV, approaching 500,000 subscribers on YouTube at the current time. I'm 51 years old. I'm originally from New York. Grew up in New Jersey. Went to school at the University of Wisconsin in the late 80s. Up until that point, I had no interest in Japan or the Japanese language. I had no interest in Japanese cars or really anything that I'm kind of interested in doing today. Japan's economy was approaching number one in the world. America was afraid at the time that we were going to be overtaken by Japan. And from a business student, which I was, perspective, learning about that and how this small country was booming and just, really, books were being written about it being Japan is number one, the world's number one economy. And for me, I wanted to make money. I wanted to learn. I started studying about Japanese culture and studying the language, and it really fascinated me, got me to Japan. And from there, my job opportunities opened up with Japanese companies, and an opportunity with one company led to another opportunity, which got me to Japan, where I lived for 6 years in the 90s before coming back to the United States and continuing to do business, continuing to entertain on YouTube and do a variety of different businesses over the years between America and Japan and Asia in general, a lot of different places in Asia as well.
That's like super cool. I think that's probably the first time we've ever heard from the people we've interviewed, someone going to Japan, learning Japanese from a business and economic standpoint. Can you talk more about that summer that you spent in Japan and how you were able to learn Japanese during that time?
Yes, absolutely. So, I think even back in my day in learning Japanese, people who were motivated to learn Japanese back in that day, it wasn't necessarily business and making money. There was people who were into Japanese manga, aspects of Japanese culture like that. For me, it was really about business and wanting to, make a future out of doing business between America and Japan. So in order to do that, as I started studying Japanese at Wisconsin, I started meeting different exchange students from Japan that were there, became friendly with them, and we started outside of my Japanese classes. So we started going out and hanging out and drinking together and partying together and making Japanese food events and parties together. And two of those kids were brothers, and their parents own a very large chicken farm in rural Saitama. And they said to me, hey Steve, if you'd like to go to Japan and experience Japan for the first time, you could do that. You can go and we have a room next to one of the farms where the chickens are, and you could go stay there. We won't be there this summer, but you can go there, work, and teach some English and live and, experience Japan. And I said, yeah, absolutely. That was going to be great. So I took off in the summer. Now, granted, I'm from New York and New Jersey. I'd never been on a chicken farm in America, let alone in Japan. But it was fantastic, and it wound up becoming an opportunity for me that where I was immersed in a rural part of Japan. We're talking about 1991. There was not a lot of other foreigners in Japan at the time. I was on a chicken farm experiencing and working with old ladies and younger guys and eating with them at night and drinking with them on the weekends and going to karaoke and doing all these kind of things, that I was just thrown into. And it was tough. It was hard. My Japanese was not very good when I got there, but that summer really gave me confidence to that I could learn the language. And when I got back to Wisconsin, and I was maybe a second or third year Japanese student, I think at that time, I knew that I could be as good as anybody of the kids who had exchange cultural exchange trips or homestay things in Japan or that before and so it was really that experience, being immersed, making friends, convincing myself when I was in Japan. This was really important, and I think for everybody even today, you got to be, Japanese people want to learn English too. So in some ways you got to be a little maybe selfish, like I wanted to learn Japanese. I did not want to hang out with people who wanted to speak English. I didn't want to be around any other Americans or non-Japanese people. I wanted to go hang out with all Japanese people. I wanted to go out at night with Japanese people. I was working with Japanese people. I wanted to speak Japanese 24/7. And I did that. And I think it really, really, really helped in me becoming more fluent and understanding of Japanese culture and the language. And that summer on that chicken farm set the stage for everything for me after that.
It sounds like an amazing origin story if I've ever heard one.
Did you have any specific study methods outside of just immersing with the language and the people? Like, did you do flashcards or textbooks outside of that?
Well, as a student in Wisconsin, obviously we did regular, Japanese books. I even have some of them around here from that day. We studied, of course, proper Japanese. And this is really important, I think, for a lot of people, right? So if you don't have a foundation in Japanese of proper, polite, teinego, Kenjogo, Sonkeigo. Those levels of Japanese and an understanding, and your head has got to be trained to understand these things, because the way of thinking in these different aspects of the Japanese language is not easy as an American person. For me, outside of that textbook learning, the other learning came when I was in a train station. Train stations are great learning opportunities. On trains are great learning opportunities. In restaurants are great learning opportunities. Why? Because there's kanji and there's things written all around you. There are advertisements with things written kanji that you're like, oh my God, what is that? What is it? And you start looking at your friends' last names. Honda-san, Suzuki-san, Yamada-san, Tanaka-san, Taguchi-san. And you start saying, oh, okay, Ta. Oh, okay, I see that. That's Ta from this. And then you start seeing these characters in different situations. Japanese people's last names, station names, for me, became really, really great study tools during a time where you're sitting on a train with nothing to do really anyway. And if you have a camera, back then we didn't have smartphones. There was not that stuff, but a picture, or you'd memorize it. Or I carried always my little jisho with me, and I would try to find what it was and try to study it. On the airplane, in karaoke, for me, understanding what the words were to the Japanese songs, not just appreciating the melodies, but singing along with proper pronunciation and kind of understanding what they were saying. In the old days, when you bought a CD or a cassette, it came with what was called a kashikado. Kashikado was the lyrics printed on the thing. And sometimes there was furigana, and there was other ways to see and understand. But sometimes you had to look and go through a big dictionary to find what that character was, or listen to it and try to get it over and over again. But that listening, reading, ultimately writing, maybe putting the furigana in, and then repeating and repeating and repeating, and going and looking at those on the train stations or the learning outside. Oh, the last element is, while you're learning the proper Japanese in school, and I recommend learning the proper Japanese first, because once you learn the informal, friendly Japanese, I don't know that it's very easy to go back, from saying, ore wa koya, talk like your friends would be out drinking, talking, to being in a professional situation. I think it's harder to go that way. So learn formal, then go out with your friends, because your friends are going to tell you, Steve, you're like annoying us with all this polite formal talk. Okay, I mean, we can say, you don't have to say watashi wa nani nani desu. Everything doesn't have, but if you only learned how to say tabetai, onaka suita, hareta. What happens when you go out in a professional situation, assuming that's a goal of yours? And let's say it's not a goal of yours, but even in Japanese culture, you walk in and let's say there's a 80-year-old obachan, running the store. Are you going to talk to her the way you talk to your friends? But those were some of my ways, and still are my ways of continuing to learn Japanese. Now I don't get to Japan, for the last two and a half, whatever years now. But, when I read comments from my fans on my YouTube channel, I'm reading them in Japanese. 98% of them are in Japanese. So for me, I wake up in the morning and I get to at least look at Japanese. It's in my eyes. I get to see it. If I can't figure out something, I try to, now you could, take a picture, use the phone. It's easy. But it was almost better that I had to work hard in the old days to learn stuff, because once you learned it, you didn't want to forget it. It's almost too easy now. which is a whole nother topic. But
What was it like getting to that next level of Japanese? Like maybe from casual to a business level or a professional level? Was it a difficult transition?
Because there was even more, I mean, above and beyond what we learned in school and polite language. Now you go into business environments and, let's say you speak Japanese really good, but let's say you don't know a darn thing about computers or cars. And let's say you go into a meeting and the entire meeting's about, this topic of stuff, and they're throwing around all these, data software, we understand what data software and everything else, but in between are all these other things talking about this data software that you don't understand because you are not a computer scientist or whatever. I remember early days in Japan working, being, hey, okay, great, you could translate in these meetings. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll translate in the meeting, sure. And if they're talking about, the only great thing about Japanese was, as long as you knew I, U, A, O, if you came across a word that you didn't know, you would just kind of take the English word and just make it into a Japanese sounding word, like computer or data where, data no file, a lot of it is already, but you can, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, I'll just kind of, but it wasn't comfortable. Being in a situation trying to translate stuff you don't understand, it's gets very uncomfortable quickly. Yeah.
Did you ever want to achieve like a native level of Japanese? Was that ever a thing that you thought about?
Yeah, always. I always wanted to call people on the phone and say, Moshimoshi, hajimemashite, Steve desu. And they say, eh? Everyone would always be, eh? Oh, Nihonjin ka to omotta. I always wanted people to think until they saw my face or I said my name. I didn't want them to think I was not Japanese. It bothered me more than anything was how terrible other students who were studying Japanese at the time. I wasn't as good as they were in Japanese in some aspects, but I knew their accents were horrible. It would bother my ear to hear the teacher say something and then hear these guys say it and think they were saying it well because it was, to my ear, it didn't match. And that maybe the musical background that I have. I was in band and choir and I like music and like Japanese music. And, you could tell when somebody's sharp or flat on a note. And you could tell when somebody's talking Japanese that it doesn't sound like the way Sensei just said it. I didn't want to sound that way. So my motivation was to try to sound, even with words that were American words, like computer. A lot of guys will speak Japanese. 私はこの間行ってきたんだけど、computer, it becomes an English pronunciation. It reminds me when I moved to California and I met all these guys who were like of Mexican or Hispanic descent, right? And they would say, like you'd be talking, say, oh yeah, man, no, go down there. The road is up there on the right. It's called Avenida de los Árboles, right? And you say, whoa, where'd that come from, right? And but I do it too now. Like if somebody says, no, I want to go to Japan. Okay, yeah, you want to go to Ginza, and then you want to go see Kabuki, and then you want to go see Roppongi. Oh yeah, Shibuya, and they're looking at me saying, what? I can't say it otherwise. It's hard to say it without a proper pronunciation. I understand now why those Mexican guys in California would always say, we're talking a sentence, and then as soon as it came up to Calle de las Verdes, and you'd say, but it was cool. I thought it was cool.
Obviously, your YouTube channel is about cars, and we kind of glossed over kind of the Japanese ability in different words related to that. But what exactly got you into Japanese cars to begin with?
Well, I've been into cars since I was a kid. But only into American cars, muscle cars, classic cars, street rods, hot rods, low riders, all American culture cars. I was not in the Japanese cars whatsoever. But Japan starts sending cars here, in the late 60s, early 70s, really more and more. And here's these little cars, thought of as pieces of crap, not reliable, but they were, they were made fun of. People were made fun of, but they were good on gas. They were small, they were efficient. And as more and more people bought them because the prices were cheap and they're much more efficient and run a lot better and than a lot of the American cars that cost us a lot more money, more and more these cars came up. I still never liked them and still never owned a Japanese car. They're at that chicken farm during that summer for the first time. And that was the first time in person that I saw Japanese cars that I'd never seen before. And I saw the way Japanese guys styled out their cars and customized their cars the way I've never seen before. Like I was like, man, there's some really cool cars here. Boy, that's cool. And of course, being that I like cars, I started meeting people who were into cars and started, driving around in different cars and started, that exposure led me to really start appreciating and liking Japanese cars a lot more than I ever did prior to that. I never did. And now, 30 years later, whatever it is. I got the garage behind me here has 15 Japanese cars in it, right-hand drive, left-hand drive. I drive an American truck, and I have a Lamborghini, an Italian car as well, but it has the Japanese flag on it, and it's quite unique, kind of Japanese styled out. And that's when I was exposed to the cars there, and when really loved it. And then in America, we have something called the 25-year rule or 25-year law, which means that cars that were not initially for sale or available in the United States for sale, once 25 years passes from their time of manufacture, you can import that vehicle legally into the United States. In a freedom-loving place like Texas, you bring your 25-year-old Japanese car in, you register it, and you cruise around, as I was doing today prior to meeting up with you guys, in a right-hand drive 1979 Nissan Gloria.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that before.
And if you watch my videos, cars are one method of sharing Japanese culture with people here, but the other way is I do it with food a lot. If you watch these videos, some of them have millions of views now on them because it's just of my American friends' first time eating curry rice. My American's first time trying Japanese sake. These videos are really popular, and the people who in them are not actors. They're friends of mine who are really, Texans of all backgrounds, or they moved here and they're like Japanese culture, but they don't know about these foods, and they try it and they love it. And we share Japanese culture through the food videos.
Yeah, and I guess really speaking towards that cultural sense, because that's another theme that we always kind of come across on the podcast. And obviously you've been in so many different scenarios between the two countries of US and Japan. How would you kind of compare the cultures, and is there one that you prefer, or is it just one happy combination?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I actually have a formula. What it basically is, if you take the best of Japan and you take the best of America and you kind of blend it together somehow, you can really have the best place and the best people on earth. And okay, so here's the two parts of it. Americans are individuals. We are very individualistic. We like to maybe stand out. We're a little more friendly and open, and kind of, this is kind of who we are, generally speaking, as Americans. Japan, on the other side, I think everything is very by the book. They have the expression about the nail that stands out gets hammered down, right? And this is very much Japan. Japanese read manuals, read books, respect laws, do things the way they were intended to be done. So if you took all those nice qualities of Japan and kind of mixed them with a little bit of the wildness of America, and you put the two together, I really think it's cool. You'd have people who respected law and order and rules and manuals and why things need to be done step by step. But you combine that with a little bit of American style, and a little bit of our individual freedom. Japanese always say, you talk to people, you just say hi to people, whatever. I say, I say hi to people. I give them a thumbs up. I don't even have to say hi. And all of a sudden you made a friend. That's not as easy to do in Japan. So you combine those two things together, you have the perfect culture, perfect place. Really, really nice is the way I look at it.
Amazing. Hopefully we can go and strive to have that moving forward.
Absolutely.
And what else can we strive for? The KoreKara Message. And Steve, I know this is something that you've been working on for a really, really long time, all the way back in New York, New Jersey, going all the way to Wisconsin for college, then to a chicken farm in Japan for a summer, coming back, going and doing business with Japan, back and forth, and finally coming here to Texas for YouTube. I know you've carefully crafted this message up, and it's finally time to tell the world. So Steve, I'm going to go shine the lights bright onto you. Let's hear it.
4 syllables. That is it. Ready? He, be, zen, shin. He, be. Every day, zen, shin. Forward progress. Move forward daily. You may take a couple steps forward and take a step back, but you know what? Hibi Zenshi means that, if you hit a wall, you run into trouble, you take little steps forward. You don't have to hit a home run every day. Try to move forward every single day. And even when you hit hard times, you think about those words, Hibi Zenshin. And I think Japanese think that way with that word. It's in their culture. It's kind of ingrained in the society. Still, you have to look. We have to move forward. We can't stop moving forward. So, Hibi Zenshin. That's it. Short, sweet, easy for everybody to remember, and great words to live by.
Hey guys, thanks for making it to the end of the video. Comment down below if you've ever driven a car. comment down below what your favorite Japanese car is.
But of course, radio shout out our patrons with Cedric Faraz, Kevin Allen, Darren, Drew, Jack, Joey, K90, Meredith, MKSX, and Suzu, Yui, and Sad Boy. Peace.
Peace.